Have you ever wondered what people's true colors look like when they think you're beneath them? I mean, really thought about it? Because here's a secret most people won't tell you. The masks we wear in polite society come off faster than you'd think when someone believes you have nothing to offer. I couldn't believe what I was about to discover when I made the craziest decision of my life, walking into my fiancé's wealthy family estate pretending to be poor, naive, and completely out of my depth. See, my grandmother once told me something that haunted me. Maya, you'll never know someone's real character until they think they have power over you. And let me tell you, she was right, in ways that would leave me absolutely shocked. What started as a simple test of character turned into the most devastating revelation of betrayal I could have ever imagined. They thought I was just some struggling girl desperate for their approval, someone they could humiliate and discard like yesterday's trash. But here's the truth they never saw coming. I was actually a successful software architect, making $37,000 a month, and I was about to expose lies, cheating, and family drama so twisted it would destroy their entire empire. They wanted to shame me, to strip away my dignity, to make me feel like I was nothing. What happened next? Let's just say that when you underestimate someone, when you backstab the wrong person, karma has a way of delivering the most shocking payback imaginable. This is the story of how I acted like a poor and naive girl when I met my fiancé's family, and it turned out that the revenge I got was sweeter than any fairy tale ending. I still remember the exact moment I decided to walk into that lion's den wearing my grandmother's old cotton dress instead of the designer clothes hanging in my closet. My name's Maya Bennett, and I'd been making $37,000 a month as a lead software architect for 3 years. But my fiancé Daniel's family, the prestigious Lancasters, had no clue about that. See, my late grandmother once told me something that stuck with me like glue. Maya, real character shows itself when people think you've got nothing to offer them. So when Daniel invited me to meet his wealthy family at their Connecticut estate, I made a choice that would change everything. I left my luxury car at home, borrowed my roommate's beat-up Honda, and dressed like I was barely scraping by. Call it crazy, call it a test. I call it the smartest move I ever made. The drive up to the Lancaster mansion felt like entering another universe, honestly. Those iron gates opened to reveal what looked like something straight out of a movie. Manicured gardens, a fountain that probably cost more than most people's houses, and a driveway so long I thought I'd need GPS just to reach the front door. My heart was pounding, not from nervousness about meeting them, but from anticipation of what I was about to discover. Would they embrace me for who I pretended to be? Or would their true colors bleed through faster than cheap fabric in the wash? Daniel had always painted his family as traditional and particular about appearances, which already had my alarm bells ringing. But I couldn't believe I was actually going through with this. Me, a woman who'd built her own empire from scratch, about to play the role of a struggling nobody. The moment Daniel's mother, Catherine Lancaster, opened that massive oak door, I felt her eyes scan me from head to toe like a barcode scanner at checkout. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. You know that look, right? The one that says, I'm being polite because I have to be, not because I want to. She greeted me with a limp handshake and a, how lovely to finally meet you, that dripped with more judgment than a courtroom. Daniel's sister, Victoria, appeared behind her, wearing what I recognized as this season's Chanel, and the way she smirked when she saw my outfit told me everything I needed to know. They'd already decided I wasn't good enough, hadn't they? I was being humiliated before I'd even stepped inside, and honestly, it was exactly what I'd expected. But experiencing it still stung deeper than I'd imagined. What shocked me most wasn't their cold reception. It was Daniel's silence throughout the whole thing. He stood there like a statue, not defending me, not even trying to make his family see past my clothes to the person underneath. My fiancé, the man who'd promised to stand by my side through everything, was letting his mother and sister treat me like I was something they'd scraped off their expensive Italian shoes. I felt this knot forming in my stomach, this mix of anger and disappointment that threatened to blow my cover right then and there. But I swallowed it down, smiled sweetly, and played my part perfectly. Because here's what they didn't know. I wasn't the one being tested anymore. They were, and they were failing spectacularly. As Catherine led us through their palatial home, pointing out antiques and family portraits like she was giving a museum tour, I noticed something interesting. Every story she told, every casual mention of their legacy and standards, was really just code for, "We're better than you." Victoria kept making these little comments about appropriate matches and maintaining family reputation, all while shooting glances at Daniel that I wasn't supposed to catch. The betrayal was already happening, right in front of me, and they thought I was too naive to see it. They thought I was some poor, simple girl who'd be grateful just to breathe the same air as the mighty Lancasters. Little did they know, I'd built systems that could trace every digital footprint they'd ever made, and my patience was just as sophisticated as my coding skills. By the time we sat down for afternoon tea, yes, actual afternoon tea with china so delicate I was afraid to breathe near it, I'd already started piecing together their game. The way Catherine kept bringing up Daniel's ex-girlfriend Isabelle, who apparently came from such a wonderful family in the business. The knowing looks between Victoria and their father, Thomas, whenever Daniel mentioned our wedding plans. The subtle digs about my quaint background and simple lifestyle that were supposed to make me feel shamed and small. But here's the truth they were about to learn the hard way. I wasn't small, I wasn't simple, and I definitely wasn't going to let this family destroy me without consequences. Something bigger was brewing beneath the surface of their fake smiles and passive-aggressive comments, and I was about to find out exactly what kind of revenge the universe had in store for people who judged books by their covers. The real test began the moment we stepped into what Catherine called the family sitting room, a space so ridiculously lavish it made my penthouse apartment look like a college dorm. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with actual frescoes, and furniture that probably belonged in the Louvre was casually arranged like it was from IKEA. Thomas Lancaster sat in a leather chair that looked more like a throne, reading the Financial Times and barely acknowledging my existence with a grunt. I watched as Daniel immediately shifted his posture, becoming smaller somehow, more submissive around his father. It was like watching a grown man turn back into an insecure boy. And honestly, that transformation scared me more than his family's cold reception, because if he couldn't stand up to them now, what would our marriage look like? Catherine wasted no time launching into what I can only describe as an interrogation disguised as polite conversation. "So Maya, dear, Daniel mentioned you work in, what was it again? Something with computers?" The way she said computers made it sound like I fixed laptops at a strip mall kiosk. I played along perfectly, describing my job in the vaguest terms possible, just helping companies with their tech problems, and doing some coding work here and there. Victoria actually laughed, this sharp little sound that cut through the room like glass breaking. "How quaint. Daniel, you always did have a soft spot for charity cases," she said, and I swear I saw Daniel flinch but say absolutely nothing. The humiliation they were trying to make me feel was palpable, thick in the air like expensive perfume gone rancid. But what they didn't realize was that every insult, every condescending smile, was just fuel for what was coming. Then came the comments about my appearance, my background, my prospects, all wrapped in that special kind of cruelty that rich people have perfected over generations. Catherine asked about my parents with this pitying tone, and when I explained they'd passed away years ago, she actually said, "Oh, how unfortunate. No family connections then." Like I was damaged goods, marked down for clearance. Thomas finally looked up from his newspaper to ask what my father did, and when I said he'd been a mechanic, the silence that followed was deafening. You could literally hear the judgment settling over the room like dust. Victoria exchanged a look with her mother that screamed, "I told you so," and Daniel just sat there, sipping his tea, saying nothing. The betrayal of his silence was worse than any insult they could throw at me, because this was the man who claimed to love me, and he was letting them tear me apart. What shocked me most was how systematic their humiliation campaign was. Catherine suggested I might want to take some etiquette classes before the wedding, implying I was too rough around the edges for their social circles. Victoria offered to take me shopping. Somewhere affordable, of course, because clearly my wardrobe needed significant improvement. Even the household staff seemed to look down on me, probably coached by Catherine to treat me like I was somehow less than. Every interaction was designed to make me feel shamed, to break me down until I either left on my own or became so grateful for their acceptance that I'd do anything to keep it. They were trying to strip away my dignity piece by piece, like vultures picking at roadkill. But here's what the Lancasters didn't understand about people like me. I'd built my self-worth from the ground up, and it wasn't for sale at any price. By dinner time, I'd been subjected to more passive-aggressive attacks than a politician at a debate. Catherine seated me at the far end of their massive dining table, literally as far from the family as possible without putting me in another room. The meal itself was this elaborate 7-course affair with more forks than I had fingers, clearly designed to make me uncomfortable and expose my supposed lack of sophistication. Victoria kept making little comments about proper table manners and how things are done in refined society, each one a tiny dagger wrapped in silk. Thomas discussed business deals and country club memberships like I wasn't even there, occasionally asking Daniel about that Isabelle girl and whether she was still single. The whole scene was so carefully orchestrated, so deliberately cruel, that I almost admired their commitment to being awful. Almost. But then something happened that changed everything. Something that made all their petty insults seem like child's play compared to the real betrayal lurking beneath the surface. As dessert was being served, I excused myself to use the restroom, navigating through their maze-like mansion with its endless corridors and oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors judging me from their frames. I was heading back to the dining room when I heard voices coming from Thomas's study, the door slightly ajar. Catherine's voice, sharp and conspiratorial, mixed with Victoria's excited whispers, and another voice I didn't recognize at first. Curiosity got the better of me, or maybe it was karma guiding my steps, and I moved closer, staying hidden in the shadows of the hallway. What I heard in the next few minutes would shatter every illusion I had left about the Lancaster family and Daniel himself. And honestly, I couldn't believe how deep their web of lies actually went. I pressed myself against the wall outside Thomas's study, my heart hammering so loud I was afraid they'd hear it. Catherine's voice came through crystal clear. This Maya situation is getting out of hand. Daniel's actually talking about setting a wedding date. Victoria laughed, that same cruel sound from earlier, and replied, "Mother, relax. She's just a placeholder until we can get Isabelle back in the picture. You know the Hartwell merger depends on Daniel marrying into their family." My blood ran cold. A placeholder? I stood there, frozen, as the truth started crashing down around me like a building collapsing in slow motion. This wasn't just about them thinking I wasn't good enough. This was a full-blown conspiracy, and Daniel was apparently in on it. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced, deeper than I thought possible. Then I heard another voice, Daniel's voice, and what he said next made my stomach drop through the floor. I know. Maya's sweet and all, but she's not exactly Lancaster material, is she? Isabelle understands our world, our obligations. He actually chuckled, like my feelings were some kind of joke. I'll keep stringing Maya along for another month or two, then we'll stage something. Maybe catch me with Isabelle at the club. Make it look like I cheated so Maya breaks it off herself. That way she's the one who ends it, and I come out looking like the victim who got dumped by the gold digger. Victoria chimed in excitedly. Brilliant! And I'll make sure to spread some rumors about her being desperate and clingy. By the time we're done, no one will question why you went back to Isabelle. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just backstabbed. This was premeditated destruction of my character, my reputation, my entire life. Catherine's voice turned businesslike, cold as ice. The Hartwell deal is worth $50 million, Daniel. Your father and I didn't build this empire so you could throw it away on some nobody who works with computers. Isabelle's family brings connections, status, and most importantly, capital. This girl brings nothing but embarrassment. Thomas's gruff voice joined in. Son, sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the family. Your grandfather did it. I did it. And now it's your turn. Marry for strategy, not for feelings. You can always keep someone like Maya on the side later if you really want. The casual cruelty in his words, the way they talked about me like I was a business problem to be solved rather than a human being. It was shocking how little they valued anything beyond money and power. My hands were shaking, tears threatening to spill, but I forced myself to keep listening. Victoria's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. I've already started laying the groundwork on social media. A few carefully placed comments here and there about how desperate she seems, how she's clearly after the family money. By the time we execute the infidelity setup, public opinion will already be against her. Catherine added, and I'll make sure our friends at the country club know she's just a passing phase. Poor Daniel, caught up with the wrong sort of girl. They'll all be so sympathetic when Isabelle swoops in to comfort him. The level of calculated malice was breathtaking. This wasn't just family drama. This was character assassination being planned like a military operation. They were going to humiliate me, shame me publicly, destroy my reputation, and make me look like the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. The injustice of it all made me want to scream. I heard them discussing timelines, strategies, even which photographer to hire to capture the candid moment of Daniel's staged infidelity with Isabelle. Every detail was being mapped out like a corporate takeover, which I guess in their world, that's exactly what it was. Victoria mentioned she'd already contacted a PR firm to manage the narrative, making sure every gossip column and society page would paint me as the delusional girl who'd tried to trap a Lancaster. We'll make her so toxic that even mentioning her name will be social suicide, she said with disturbing glee. Daniel actually thanked his sister for her thoroughness. The man I'd planned to marry, the man who'd said he loved me, was thanking his family for plotting my complete and total destruction. The truth was staring me in the face, ugly and undeniable. I'd been lied to, cheated on emotionally, if not yet physically, and set up for the most spectacular public humiliation imaginable. But here's where their plan had a fatal flaw. They'd underestimated who they were dealing with. As I stood there in that hallway, wiping away tears that came from anger more than sadness, something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed into something sharper, more focused. Pure determination for justice. They wanted to play games. Fine. But they just handed me every piece of information I needed to dismantle their entire operation. See, the thing about being a software architect who specializes in data security and digital forensics is that I know how to find dirt that people think they've buried deep. And the Lancasters, for all their wealth and supposed sophistication, had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who could trace every financial transaction, every hidden deal, every skeleton in their designer closets. Revenge wasn't just going to be sweet. It was going to be absolutely devastating, and they'd never see it coming. I didn't confront them that night. No dramatic scene, no tears, no accusations, just a quiet retreat back to the guest room they'd assigned me, the smallest and least decorated room in their massive estate. While Daniel knocked softly on my door asking if I was okay, I told him I was just tired from the long day. He actually had the nerve to kiss my forehead and whisper, "I love you," before heading to his own room. I smiled at him, played the naive girlfriend perfectly, and the moment that door clicked shut, I pulled out my laptop and got to work. See, vengeance isn't about explosive confrontations. It's about patience, strategy, and hitting your enemy where they're most vulnerable. And after 8 years in cybersecurity and financial systems, I knew exactly where the Lancasters kept their skeletons. The truth was about to become their worst nightmare. My first move was accessing public records. Completely legal, completely traceable. Nothing they could accuse me of later. The Lancaster Automotive Group, their precious empire of luxury car dealerships across 5 states, wasn't quite as solid as they liked to pretend. Financial disclosures showed declining revenues for 3 consecutive quarters, loans restructured twice in 18 months, and profit margins that would make any investor nervous. But it was the shell companies I found that really caught my attention. LCG Holdings, Victoria Lancaster Consulting, Thomas Lancaster Properties, all connected through a web of transactions that screamed money laundering or tax evasion. I couldn't believe how sloppy they'd been, honestly. For people so obsessed with appearances, they'd left a digital trail wider than the highway. This wasn't just about exposing their betrayal anymore. This was about bringing down an empire built on fraud. Then I found Victoria's little secret, and let me tell you, karma works in mysterious ways. My girl had been embezzling funds from the family business for at least 2 years, funneling money through her consulting firm for services never actually rendered. We're talking $2, $3 million in fraudulent invoices, fake vendor accounts, and expense reports that would make a Hollywood accountant blush. She'd been financing her designer lifestyle not just with family money, but by actively stealing from the company her father had built. The irony was delicious. Here she was, judging me for being poor, while she was literally a thief in Chanel. I documented everything, cross-referenced bank statements with company records, built a case so airtight even their expensive lawyers wouldn't be able to wiggle out of it. Victoria wanted to destroy my reputation. I was about to destroy her freedom, but I needed an ally, someone inside their world who had reason to want the Lancasters to fall. That's when I remembered Daniel mentioning Robert Hayes, a former business partner of Thomas who'd supposedly parted ways with the company years ago. A few searches later, I found him. A man who'd been forced out of his own dealership network through what looked like hostile takeover tactics disguised as legitimate business deals. The court documents told a story of broken contracts, stolen clients, and a family man who'd lost everything because Thomas Lancaster wanted his territory. I reached out through a carefully worded email, suggesting we might have mutual interests in seeing justice served. Within 12 hours, Robert replied with 3 words: "I'm listening." He had documents, recordings, testimony from employees the Lancasters had screwed over. He'd been building his own case for years, just waiting for the right moment. Now we had an army of 2, and the payback was going to be legendary. Robert and I met at a coffee shop 2 towns over, far from any Lancaster social circles. He was in his 60s, still sharp as a knife, and angrier than I was, which is saying something. "They don't just destroy businesses," he told me, sliding a folder across the table. "They destroy lives, families, reputations. Thomas Lancaster is a shark in a suit, and his children learned every dirty trick from Daddy Dearest." The folder contained proof of bribes to city officials, fraudulent insurance claims, even blackmail materials the Lancasters had used against competitors. It was a treasure trove of corruption that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. But Robert's most valuable gift was information about the upcoming engagement party, the massive social event Catherine was planning to officially introduce me to their high society friends. "That's when they'll make their move," Robert said. "They'll humiliate you publicly, probably stage the infidelity scene right there. They love an audience." Perfect. Because I was going to give them a show they'd never forget. Over the next 2 weeks, while playing the obedient, love-struck fiancé, I built my case like I was constructing the world's most sophisticated software system. Every piece of evidence was verified, cross-referenced, backed up in multiple secure locations. I contacted a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but a former prosecutor who specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for taking down corrupt families. I worked with Robert to coordinate testimony from former employees, gather financial records that prove the Lancaster empire was built on fraud and intimidation. And here's the beautiful part. I did all of this while Catherine and Victoria continued planning my public humiliation, thinking I was too stupid to notice. Daniel kept up his loving fiancé act, probably rehearsing his fake affair with Isabelle behind my back. They thought they were so clever, so untouchable. But the truth about people like the Lancasters? They've gotten away with things for so long. They forget that eventually, someone's going to be smart enough and angry enough to fight back, and that someone was about to walk into their engagement party wearing the most expensive dress they'd ever seen, armed with enough evidence to send their whole family to prison. The night of the engagement party arrived like Judgment Day, wrapped in champagne and string quartets. Catherine had spared no expense. The Lancaster estate was transformed into something out of a fairy tale, with thousands of white roses, crystal everything, and a guest list that read like a who's who of New England's elite. I'd told Daniel I'd meet him there, claiming I needed to get ready at home because his family's guest room didn't have good lighting for makeup. He bought it completely, probably relieved he wouldn't have to pretend to care about my preparations. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the morning at the most exclusive salon in Connecticut, followed by a visit to Cartier and then Valentino. When I stepped out of the car I'd rented, a sleek black Mercedes that cost more per day than my fake job supposedly paid in a month, I watched the valet's eyes nearly pop out of his head. This wasn't the simple poor Maya they'd been mocking. This was the real me, and I was about to blow their entire world apart. The transformation was total and deliberate. My hair was styled in an elegant updo that had taken 3 hours to perfect. woven with diamond pins that caught the light like tiny explosions. The dress, a custom midnight blue Valentino gown that hugged every curve, had cost more than some people's cars. And the Cartier jewelry draped around my neck and wrists represented about 2 months of my actual salary. I looked like I'd stepped off a red carpet, and watching the guests' faces as I walked through those doors was absolutely priceless. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "Who is that? Is that Daniel's fiancée? She looks like royalty." Catherine spotted me first, and I swear the champagne flute nearly slipped from her hand. Victoria's mouth literally dropped open, her carefully maintained composure cracking like cheap porcelain. But it was Daniel's face that I'll remember forever. Confusion, shock, and then something that looked almost like fear. Good. He should be afraid. Catherine recovered quickly, her social training kicking in as she glided over with that fake smile plastered on her face. "Maya, darling, you look different." What a surprise. Her eyes were scanning my jewelry, my dress, doing the mental math and not liking the numbers she was coming up with. Victoria appeared at her side, hostility radiating off her like heat from asphalt. "Nice dress," she said, her tone dripping with accusation. "Must have cost a fortune. Let me guess. You maxed out your credit cards trying to fit in?" I smiled sweetly, enjoying every second of their discomfort. "Actually, Victoria, I paid cash. Turns out software architecture pays pretty well when you're good at it. Really good." The color drained from Catherine's face. "Software architecture?" Daniel stepped forward, his confusion turning to anger. "Maya, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me?" I cut him off. "Tell you what, Daniel, that I make $37,000 a month, that I own a penthouse in Manhattan, that everything you and your family assumed about me was exactly what I wanted you to assume?" The truth was finally out, and it felt like justice starting to take its first breath. The crowd had grown silent, all eyes on us now like we were the evening's main entertainment, which honestly, we were about to be. Catherine tried to pull me aside, probably to contain the damage, but I wasn't having it. "No, Catherine. I think we should do this right here, in front of all your friends. After all, you love an audience, don't you?" I turned to address the room, my voice carrying over the string quartet that had awkwardly stopped playing. "I need to tell you all a story about betrayal, about a family that's been lying not just to me, but to everyone in this room." Robert Hayes emerged from the crowd right on cue, carrying a briefcase that contained copies of everything we'd compiled. Daniel's face went white. "Mr. Hayes, what are you—" But Thomas Lancaster had already figured it out, his expression transforming from confusion to pure rage. "You little—" he started, but I raised my hand. "No, Thomas. You had your turn to humiliate me. Now it's my turn to expose the truth about the Lancaster family empire. And trust me, by the time I'm done, everyone here is going to know exactly who you really are." I pulled out my tablet. Yes, I'd brought visual aids because I believe in being thorough, and projected financial documents onto the screen that had been set up for displaying engagement photos. Let's start with the Lancaster Automotive Group's real financial situation, shall we? Numbers filled the screen, showing the loans, the restructured debt, the shell companies funneling money in suspicious patterns. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria tried to rush forward, probably to smash the tablet, but Robert blocked her path. "And then there's Victoria's little embezzlement scheme," I continued, switching slides to show her fraudulent invoices and fake consulting fees. $2.3 million stolen from the family business over 2 years. That's a lot of designer handbags, isn't it, Victoria? She looked like she might faint, her face turning a shade of red that clashed horribly with her pink gown. But I wasn't done, not even close. "And Daniel, my beloved fiancé, let's talk about your plan to stage an infidelity scene with Isabelle Hartwell to force me to end our engagement. Should we play the recording I have of you discussing this with your family?" His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No words coming out. The shocking reality of their complete and total exposure was hitting them all at once. And it was beautiful. Catherine made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "This is slander. Lies. She's clearly mentally unstable, trying to ruin us because she's jealous of our success. But I was ready for that too. Actually, Catherine, it's not slander if it's true. And I have witnesses, documents, and testimony from 12 former employees who are ready to confirm every single accusation I've made tonight. I turned back to the crowd, many of whom were filming on their phones. Another thing I'd counted on. The Lancasters wanted me to feel shamed and humiliated for being poor. They wanted to destroy my dignity and reclaim their son from someone they thought was beneath them. But here's what they didn't realize. Real worth isn't measured in bank accounts or family names. It's measured in character, integrity, and how you treat people when you think no one's watching. I slipped the engagement ring off my finger and placed it on the nearest table like it was contaminated. Daniel, we're done. Not because your family humiliated me, but because you lacked the backbone to defend me, the decency to be honest with me, and the character to deserve me. You and your family can keep your empire, your status, and your lies. I'm reclaiming my life, my self-worth, and my freedom from all of you. The aftermath of that engagement party was more spectacular than I could have ever imagined. Within 24 hours, every major news outlet in Connecticut was running stories about the Lancaster family scandal. Fraud, embezzlement, corruption, the whole ugly truth laid bare for everyone to see. The videos from the party had gone viral, watched by millions of people who couldn't believe the audacity of what they were witnessing. Catherine's carefully curated social media presence became a graveyard of deleted posts and disabled comments as former friends turned their backs faster than rats, abandoning a sinking ship. Thomas's business partners started demanding audits and investigations, pulling out of deals that had taken years to negotiate. Victoria was facing criminal charges for embezzlement, her lawyer already negotiating a plea deal that would probably involve prison time. And Daniel? He'd become a social pariah, the man who'd conspired to publicly humiliate his own fiancé, exposed as a coward and a liar. Karma had delivered justice more swiftly and completely than any court ever could. Robert Hayes and I watched it all unfold from the safety of my actual penthouse, toasting with expensive wine as news alerts kept flooding our phones. "You know what the best part is?" Robert said, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "They can't even blame you for most of this. The financial investigators found things even we didn't know about. Offshore accounts, tax evasion going back a decade, bribes to state officials. They'd built such a massive house of cards that one good push brought the whole thing crashing down." He was right. My exposure had triggered a domino effect that revealed layers upon layers of corruption. The Lancaster Automotive Group was being investigated by federal authorities, their dealerships facing closure, their assets frozen pending the outcome of multiple lawsuits. Everything Thomas had built, everything Catherine had been so proud of, was collapsing in real time. And the shocking thing? I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little bit. They'd tried to destroy an innocent person for profit and social status. They deserved everything that was happening to them. The media tried to find me, of course. Reporters camped outside my building, calling my office, attempting to get the exclusive story of the woman who'd brought down a business empire. But I'd planned for that too. Through my lawyer, I released a simple statement. I have no further comment on the Lancaster family situation. The evidence speaks for itself, and I trust the legal system to deliver appropriate justice. I ask for privacy as I move forward with my life. And then I did something the Lancasters would never understand. I disappeared. Not literally, but I returned to my quiet, private existence. No book deals, no interview circuits, no attempts to monetize my 15 minutes of fame. See, revenge for me was never about becoming famous or getting rich. I already had money and success. It was about ensuring that people who hurt others faced consequences, that betrayal didn't go unpunished, and that dignity could be reclaimed even after the worst humiliation. My grandmother had taught me that the truest victory is living well, not living loudly. 3 months later, I ran into Isabelle Hartwell at a tech conference in Boston. The same Isabelle who was supposed to be Daniel's appropriate match. She approached me nervously, probably expecting me to hate her, but I felt nothing but pity. "I need you to know," she said quietly. I had no idea about their plan. When everything came out, I realized they'd been manipulating me too, using my family's company as leverage. We talked for almost an hour, and I learned that the Hartwells had pulled out of the merger the moment the scandal broke, wanting nothing to do with the Lancaster name. Isabelle had actually ended a relationship with Daniel years ago because she'd seen glimpses of his family's toxic behavior. "You're braver than I ever was," she told me. "I just ran away. You stayed and fought back. But that wasn't quite right. I hadn't fought back out of bravery. I'd fought back because sometimes the universe puts you in a position where you can either let injustice win or you can stand up and demand better. And when you have the skills, resources, and evidence to make things right, that's not revenge. That's justice." A year after the engagement party that became the engagement apocalypse, I visited my grandmother's grave with flowers and a good bottle of wine. I sat there in the sunshine, telling her everything that had happened, and I swear I could feel her approval in the warm breeze that rustled through the trees. "You were right, Grandma," I said softly. Character really does show itself when people think you have nothing to offer. And the people who failed your test? They lost everything that actually mattered: their reputation, their freedom, their dignity. The Lancaster Automotive Group had been sold off piece by piece to pay legal fees and restitution. Victoria was serving 18 months in a minimum security facility. Thomas and Catherine had retreated to a modest home in Florida, their social circle reduced to nothing. And Daniel? Last I heard, he was working as a sales manager at a mid-tier dealership, his trust fund depleted by legal bills, his engagement to someone new already called off when she discovered his history. They'd all been brought low by their own choices, their own cruelty, their own lack of basic human decency. As for me, I'm still Maya Bennett, still making my $37,000 a month, still living my quiet, successful life that needs no validation from anyone. I date sometimes, but I'm in no rush. I've learned that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who doesn't truly see your worth. My work is fulfilling, my friendships are genuine, and my conscience is clear. People sometimes recognize me from the viral videos and ask if I have any regrets about exposing the Lancasters so publicly. My answer is always the same. I regret that it had to happen at all, but I don't regret standing up for myself. Because here's the real truth that I learned from that whole nightmare. Self-worth isn't something other people give you, and it's not something they can take away. It's something you build inside yourself, brick by brick, choice by choice, and once it's solid enough, no amount of money or status or family drama can shake it. The Lancasters wanted to humiliate a poor, naive girl. Instead, they got destroyed by a woman who knew her value and wasn't afraid to prove it. And honestly, that's the best kind of ending I could have asked for. So tell me, have you ever been in a situation where someone completely underestimated you, where people judged you before they even knew your story? I want to hear about it in the comments below. What happened when you finally revealed the truth? Did you get your revenge? Or did you take the high road? And here's what I'm really curious about. Do you think I went too far by exposing the Lancasters so publicly? Or do you believe that betrayal and family drama like that deserves to be brought into the light? Because honestly, this whole experience taught me something powerful about self-worth and dignity. Sometimes the people who try to humiliate you are actually revealing their own lack of character, not yours. Have you ever had to reclaim your dignity after being shamed or backstabbed by people you trusted? What would you have done differently in my situation? Would you have confronted them privately? Or would you have gone for the public exposure like I did? Drop your thoughts, your stories, your own experiences with karma and justice in the comments. I read every single one, and I love hearing how you've dealt with the toxic people in your lives. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own relationships and the masks people wear, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'm going to keep sharing these provocative, real-life stories about betrayal, revenge, and the shocking truths that hide behind closed doors. Trust me, the next story I have lined up will make this one look tame. So subscribe now, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. And who knows, maybe your story will be featured in a future video. Let's keep this conversation going. And remember, never let anyone make you feel less than you are.